Welcome to another Gaslec podcast, and thank you very much indeed for watching and listening. So this video is going to be, this podcast, we're going to be talking about plumbing, typically copper pipe and jointing methods, and a couple of different ideas and some of the terminologies that we use in the professional plumbing industry. So for you DIYers and those new coming into the industry, so get your sort of head around a little bit. So I'm going to run through those with you. So there is a video side to this audio podcast. So if you want to see that, if you go to the YouTube channel, which is the Gaslec podcast, same logo, be exactly the same content. All of our previous audio onlys are on there as well. So we're up to, this will be audio 27. So all 20 previous 26s will be on there as just as an audio only, as well as, and I've done a few little videos of some extra videos on there as well on the YouTube side, which wasn't really relevant to audio onlys. But anyway, that's enough of me rattling. Here we go. So you're a DIY, you've got your own home, and you've got a problem where you've got a leaky pipe. So let's say it's on a straight piece of copper pipe, 1522, whatever it is, doesn't matter. And there's a hole in it. So there's a couple of ways you can get a hole in a piece of copper pipe. Now, copper as a material itself is actually very, very good as a water pipe. And that's why we used it for so many years. If you've got a discrepancy in the pipe, there's a little bump or something or a little kink in the pipe, water is actually quite erosive. And we only got to look at the coastlines of just around the UK. And we can see actually there's water cutting tools. You know, they cut stone at a very, very high pressure, and it'll cut through just plain water at a high enough pressure. So as this is going around, like your heating system is going on and on and on, and the little bits of debris in your heating systems can hit these little bumps inside the copper pipe, and basically it just starts eroding it away, and then suddenly you've got a little spring, a little leak. So you go, oh no, what am I going to do? So most DIYs, what they will do is they'll use a compression fitting, which is absolutely fine, not a problem at all. You need very minimal tools for a compression. So what I would say is drain the water out of the system, out of the pipe work or whatever it is, identify it, hot, cold, flow, return, primaries to the boiler, whatever it is, identify that correctly, and then cut the pipe. Now, a lot of people then use a hacksaw, and what's really, really important with a hacksaw is that you take off all the little burrs afterwards. So whether you're using a bit of wire wool, a little tiny hand file, you know, you're not in a rush if you're doing it in your own home type stuff. So, you know, spend that bit of time and get it nice. So if you cut the pipe straight down through the for the hole, that's how I would do it. Cut down straight through the hole, and then you can put in a joint. So where it does become a problem is if you're on a timber joist and you've got the timber floorboard and it's really close to it, and the reason why it's got a hole in it is because it wasn't deep enough to start with. Now, if you do get that issue and you can't cut the timber out anymore, then I'd say make a cut either side within the voids, and then have two joints and a new piece of pipe between the two. Because if you go and put a joint on that top side, it's going to hold the floorboard up because they're a bit thicker on the compressions than they are on the solder joints. But even the solder joints, they're a little bit thicker, and that could then cause you problems with the floorboards rocking and more compression on it, as well as moving forward. So ideally, you'd sort of notch the joist and get that timber a bit down a little bit so you can get the copper pipe a bit lower. But anyway, so you've got a piece of copper pipe and you cut it and you do it. So here I've got a 22mm copper coupling, just because it's a brass coupling, just because it's slightly bigger. So within this here we have two nuts, and we have these items in here called olives. So this is a copper olive. They also come in brass, but the copper ones are a bit softer. There's other reasons why. I'm just going to try and find the camera here. There we are. So bang in the middle. So there we are, and it goes on. Now these ones, because they are a 22 and they're not a 3/4 to 22, they are the same both way round. So if you do drop it, it doesn't matter on this. If you've got the reduce in 3/4 to 22 olives, so if you've got an old imperial pipe to metric pipe, you will see this being like a taper, because the 3/4 pipe is very slightly smaller. But for the sake of conversation, we're using 22 all the way through. So you'd cut your pipe, you'd separate them, make sure there's no water, have an eventuality in case there is a bit of water, where it would be an old towel underneath there to catch any drips. and then just slide this on. So you slide one end on, and then you do exactly the same. You take this apart, and then you'd slide the other side on. So now you've got the two pipes with a nut and olive on both sides, and then we've got the coupler. Now the coupler, most bits of copper pipe have got a little bit of play in them. You know, there's not many times it's going timber to timber or wall to wall and you can't move them. But so in this situation, if you can separate them a little bit, pull them apart, bring them together. Now inside there, you can see that little ridge. So that is the stop line between the two pipes, and that there must only be 1 mil thick. So if you did manage to cut it, put it across, the kerf of the blade of your hacksaw is probably going to be about that size, so you won't have to take out any extra material after you've cut it, but just make sure it's nice and clean as it comes back through. And then just slide that on, and then pop the pipe in, and then do your nut and olive up with a little bit of plumbing paste, a bit of V2. I haven't got any here to show you, but a little bit of plumbing paste. Don't use PTFE on the olives and on the threads. You don't need to. And then do them up, not too tight. So just do them up, hand tight, and then probably another half a turn on that with a set of grips and spanners. And that is about it. And then test it and then check it. And if you're on heating pipes or hot water, get it hot and then review it as well, just to make sure it's not leaking. So because, you know, copper pipe will expand, brass will expand. They all expand at different rates as there are different materials, and this is a lot thicker and then the copper pipe. So just make sure when you've done the testing, when you've done the joint, you do the test as well, and to make sure that when it's heated up and all expanded, it's still all good to go. Now, what they do they do is what they call slip couplings. So where we've got that little join line there, so let's say we can't lift them up that well, or it's a bit tight. What you can do is on these is that I've done it before. I've actually got a hand file gently. Not you've got to be so careful not to damage the face. Because obviously this seat is where the olive will sit. Excuse the banging. This is where the olive will sit to make the seal as you pull it up tight. So it's really, really important you don't damage this seat, otherwise the olive won't seal and it will leak. But they do slip couplings, or you can make your own. Just take that line out, and what they'll do is that it will slip up the pipe, and then you have your other pipe, and then you can just slide it back over, and then you can then make the joint in its linear that way. And they're called slips. Normally a slip coupling is actually quite a bit longer. They're about 4 inches long, which is really, really quite handy. So if you had to take out a little chunk of it, let's say it burst and it really come out and it was a bit gnarly, you had to take out 15, 20 mil of copper pipe, you get a slip coupling, you can slide it up, slide it back, and then that little bit of a joint extra, you know, that gap will be completely covered by the slip coupling. So it's really good. So let's just say now you got some DIY tools, you've got a bit of soldering stuff, and you think, I'm going to give it a go. I'm going to get a bit of heat on this. I'm going to get some sweated joints going on. So what we have is we have this elbow here. Now this elbow, we call it an end feed. So this is a 22 elbow basically. But what it is, the pipe will go in at each end. So as a copper pipe, so it'll take a copper pipe, in this sense, 22 mil without any coupling. So this basically is the fitting or the female end. So I won't go into the terminologies and why it's called a male and a female, but you can probably guess, can't you? Really, we're all adults here. So so this is like a double female, and we call that an end feed fitting. So, and then on the other side, then we have what we call a street. So we've got the male part here, and then we've got the female part there. So what that enables us to do is that if we offer up to the copper pipe, this is the same size. But what we can do, if necessary, is we can create some little offsets like that. So if we've got it's a bit too tight. So if we went male, we'd need a copper pipe between the two. And time you add all that in, the offset of it's quite big because you need a little gap between to get the solder in. Or you can just do a street elbow, and then that then becomes a lot tighter if you've got just to get around something or other. So you can just get around that there. So, you've got those. And then we've got reducers. So this is a reducer, and this is a reducing fitting. So this reducer here takes us from 15 to 22 mil. So this will go into a fitting. So see that there? It goes in. So this technically is the male and that's the female, and that goes into the side there, which is absolutely fantastic. But when you offer that up to copper pipe, let's pretend that's just a piece of copper, that then won't go inside, because this is a fitting. And so it needs to go into a fitting, where it goes into a coupling, where it goes into an elbow. Doesn't matter, but it's the same size. This is 22. This side will always be the female. So the smaller side will always take a pipe. So this will go in at 15, and that is then, this will take a 15 pipe in, and this is then the 22 pipe out. So then if you get the street versions of, the end feed version, not the street version, and the end feed versions of these, this will be a female, and that is a female as it comes through. So that will slide onto a pipe, and that will go into a pipe. So that's the difference there between the two. Another thing I want to show you is that I found an old one downstairs. So we've got a slightly tarnished one. So when we're doing our soldering, it's really, really important. So these are quite new and they're quite shiny. So you could probably get away with that. A little bit of flux on it, bit of heat, and then off you go. And I'll do another video outside about soldering and techniques on that, and what to expect. I might even get the thermal camera out so we can see thermally the heat transferring up the pipe and stuff like that. But that's another video for another time. But what I want to do is show you, I'm just going to move my coffee out of the way here. What we want to do is show you this here, is that we've got these little abrasive strips. We get this on there, and then we just give this a quick rub up with the abrasive strip. So the discoloration of the copper pipe is actually down to oxygen. So it's reacting, and the oxygen's settling with the surface of the material. The problem is that affects the way that we do the joint. So the flux will help break some of that down, and as we put it in, and then when we heat it up, if it's a dirty pipe, as we call it, a dirty pipe, so it's I can't say the word, can I? So if it's got the oxygen's affected it and it's gone brown, when we need to clean it up. So there we are, just a quick rub, and you can then see the difference between the two. And basically, it'll be a touch and go whether that would work if you did solder that, because you're just relying on the flux to do its work to try and break some of that the oxygen stuff, the contaminants, we'll call it, to break that down. So there we are, just a quick rub up. And just to show you how shiny that is, I'll just give it a quick rub up with this, and we can then see if actually there is... if we can actually make that any better at all. So those abrasive strips are great, but they do leave a little bit of a residue behind. Wirewall is a lot better, but you get it damp, it goes rusty. But these things, they don't, which is great. And there we are. And you can see just a little bit more shinier and cleaner that is. And so you see it's scratched up the surface there a little bit. Can you see it there? Scratched up the surface. Which gives it a bit of a key as well for the solder to get into. But yeah, just a tiny bit more cleaner. So even though it looks absolutely fantastic, and I'm sure it'll absolutely be fine to solder, you can make it a little bit better. And that probably only gives you a slight advantage of not getting a leak and the whole fitting running better. But if you're only looking at 1%, that means if you do 100 joints, you're going to get one leak. So if you can then just make that 1% advantage there, it means you could have 0 leaks on 100 fittings. So there we are, all about the little advantages there. So thank you very much indeed for listening. I hope this has been of a help. Just talking about some plumbing plumbing techniques there. So thank you very much indeed. Wherever you are in the world listening, I know we've got a lot of American listeners, so they don't probably do what we do over here as slightly differently, the different terminologies they have over there. But yeah, hopefully it's of a help. So thank you very much, guys. Have a fantastic week. Any questions, podcast@gaslec.net, and I'll get them answered. Take care. Thank you. Bye.